Hello and welcome to The Nest, welcome to FreeBird and welcome to London Bookshop Crawl. Books for Change started during lockdown 2020, mainly because co-founders Wendy and Emily had time to pause and reflect on the world around us and our children. Born from an appreciation of diverse children's literature and one of the co-founders' experience of racism, Books for Change recognises that schools desperately need to diversify their bookshelves. Through determination and crowdfunder, they have raised almost £3,000 to buy 19 primary schools new diverse books that include Black protagonists, children and families of colour, families with two mums or two dads, books that help to explain gender identity, and books about mighty Iranian girls and boys who dare to be different. We've been connected today through our dear friends at London Bookshop Crawl, who greatly admire Books for Change and asked FreeBird to host this discussion. So here I am, I'm Emma, and I'm joined by Wendy and Emily because they deserve their recognition for their amazing work, and we simply love to meet amazing women and amazing people doing amazing things. So Wendy and Emily, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
For having us, yeah.
Wow, what an intro.
I know, I'm getting really good at the intros, but before clicking record, I should say, we've been so excited to talk to other human beings because it's currently lockdown 3 in the UK and we haven't been outside our doors for quite some time. Wendy's been keeping herself busy, as Emily, with volunteering, so we're still sane. And we're very excited to be having this conversation. We're going to dive straight in, and I'm really excited to learn more about Books for Change. So please tell us about it, how you started and why your mission is so important.
Okay, so it started in reaction to the swell of support for the BLM movement back in July. And if you probably remember the Blackout Tuesday, and I was following a lot of Black activists at the time, and one of the memes or messages was to educate yourselves and educate your children. And this put a little light bulb in my head, and I thought, that's right, actually, you know, I could be doing more with my children. So I called Emily and we talked about possible books that I should buy, but also we talked about our school that our children go to, and whether she thought, because of her community work, whether she thought that this is the sort of Folkestone area point of development, that there could be more diverse books in the schools. And because of Emily's background, she was like, definitely. And Emily's got the passion for the books from her background, and has a very conscious book collection for her children. And so I knew I was going to the expert here. And so we started off, and honestly, I was happy if we'd raised a couple of £100 for our school. But then Emily was like, why our school? This is Folkestone wide, you know, it'd be great to see across the area. So we started a crowdfunder, and we were just going to see how it goes. And as you said, yeah, in the end, we've raised actually 3,500.
Oh, wow.
Because we had a last fundraising gig on Halloween, which bumped up another £500. So, that very quickly took off. And I think in the climate at the time, with lockdown, everything was online, and there was a lot of feeling of what positive can I do as a, you know, white privileged person in the UK, you know, with what was happening in America and everywhere else. So I think in a way we kind of got on that momentum. So we very quickly hit our targets and kept upping our targets. And then we were getting inquiries from other teachers from other schools, or people on the edges of Folkestone, or other random places, saying, oh, I'd love to see that in our school. What about in Deal, or what about in Hythe? So these are all places on the coastline. And we were like, look, we only set out to do our school. Now we're doing 19 schools, you know, like we're not big enough to kind of do a whole county or area, or so then we ended up having conversations with people who were as passionate to have it in their areas. And so we were having Zoom calls with mostly parents, mostly women, to sort of guide them through how we went about it and how they might want to go about it. And so in the end, that kind of born our website and the toolkit. And from that, there's been 7 groups of us all together. Am I right, Emily?
Yeah,
Yeah, 6 others and us, yeah. So we've got Deal, Hythe, Ramsgate, Margate, Elam and Calder Valley in Yorkshire. And so, yeah, so they all sort of started popping up. So we've been supporting them in social media, and then we got together a website. And so it's taken on its own momentum, and it's really people wanting to see it in their area. And I think that's what's kind of unique about Books for Change, is that it is local born, local support. And I'm not saying in any way we're something new. I mean, this movement of diversity in children's books is decades old. We're the new kids on the block. There's many national campaigns and dedicated bookshops, and this is we're not trying to say we've started a revolution here. I'm hearing of other groups doing very similar on Twitter all the time. There's one in Brighton called the Multicultural School Fund, and they're doing very, very similar sort of crowdfunder with their particular interest, So we're by no means the only people, but it has caught momentum, and we're hopefully going to be supporting a new group starting in Canterbury, which you just mentioned, Marlow Theatre. But yes, the essential problem is that we felt, and also statistics say, that the books in schools are not representative of society. And so you've got, there's a couple of big pieces of research that have been done by the Book Trust and the Centre for Literacy in Primary Education, CLPE, have done these big surveys of books being published. And they're showing that, I think in 2019, 10% of children's books published had a Black, Asian, minority ethnic character in the book. But there's a distinction between characters and like a lead protagonist, and whether the person has agency and voice and things like that. So anyway, very interesting studies, but there is a problem when you consider that the population of school children, 33.5%, will come from Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups. So they're not seeing themselves in the books. And it's not, we haven't solely focused on race and culture as a difference. We're also focusing on LGBTQI characters or books, or stories, and also looking at whether there are enough disabled characters and neurodiverse characters in books as well.
Yeah, it's so important. I feel like the interesting thing about Books for Change is even though you've mentioned this has been, this initiative is going on for decades, the timing feels so perfect, because representation in media, in television, in art is so huge right now. We're looking at far more Black performers taking to our stages. We're looking at better casting opportunities for theatre, film, TV. I mean, look at our politics right now with Madam Vice President. And I think the best thing about London Bookshop Crawl, our co-host, bringing my attention to Books for Change, is I've never thought about it for books. As someone who works in the arts, as someone who works in theatre, I've never thought about representation in books. And that's what's so important about this.
And and there's piles of research on this, but children need to be able to see themselves. So there's a American doctor who's looked into this, and she was saying a mirror, a window, and a sliding door. That's what books for children should be. So they should be able to see themselves And I think from what Emily's done in terms of the storytelling, she'll be able to give you some more anecdotal stuff, but you know, the children have engaged far more and been far more responsive when they could see themselves in the book.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
you've got some
just picking up
that...
from yeah, I mean, just picking up from kind of what you guys are saying, really. I mean, I was one of those kids that I never saw myself in any of the books that I had kind of in the 80s, early 90s, and I grew up seeing princesses with blonde hair and blue eyes, and I wanted to be that princess. I wanted to be a princess with blonde hair and blue eyes because I thought that's what a princess was. I never, you know, there was Aladdin, I think there was Princess Jasmine in Disney,
yeah,
and maybe there was Pocahontas, but like in actual books, and I was a bookworm, you know, I was one of these kids that devoured books, and I've had to have, it's really interesting because for me, it's sort of a healing process, some of this. And I'm actually finding that it's really helping me, which sounds really bizarre in a way, and it's hard to sort of explain properly what I mean, but kind of just seeing all these books and like having them in my hands and being able to like be part of things like the Diverse Book Awards, which I'll come on to in a little while, but like just having the honor to be able to do that and to be sent all these books and then to be able to read them to children and bring them to life and to listen to other children now saying, wow, that little girl looks like me, or that little boy is me, and he's leading the story. It just makes me go think about how, you know, that wasn't me, but like I'm so happy and so sort of honoured that I'm the person or one of the people that's helping these other children to see themselves in books, helping them to have a voice and to be able to feel that they belong. It's just really quite magical, and that's honestly how I feel about what I do in my part in Books for Change.
Yeah, Emily's face is lighting up as we talk about this, and you're genuinely moving me to have a bit of water in my eyes there. That was really beautiful. I totally get it. I completely get it. And I can understand where you're coming from. And I think we've got a very important job. It's up to us to change now.
That's how we feel at Books for Change. We feel like we're adults that we can like help the children of the next generation to not only to see themselves, but like to have a voice that they feel is powerful. In some, like a lot of activism, a lot of being able to make change. And I think for me, like the state of the world that we're, you know, the situation that we're in currently, not just with COVID, but with a government that treats vulnerable people the way it does, and, you know, not being able to protest at this time, for example, but like, what does that mean? Like, what is protesting? What is activism? Why is that important? You know, and that children understand that their voices are really important, and that one small person can actually make a change.
Absolutely.
And I think, and that's one of the questions it comes on to is around like, you know, what do you sort of hope for Books for Change? Like, what do you see the change that you're making? But like for me, it's even if we just help one kid, that's like
we've always had this little fantasy of the little gay kid finding a queer heroes book on the shelf and going, oh, there's others like me, you know, and not fit because
100%.
Imagine if they just found that on the shelf and they could talk about it, they had language about it, you know. That's just like, oh, that would be amazing. And I think also, I think schools have been teaching, you know, a sort of colourblind model for a very long time, and I know you've asked us, have we had any conflict or any adversity yet, but I think there's a sort of very passive kind of, but we don't have a problem because we don't see race in this school attitude, and it's all colourblind, and nobody, you know, difference isn't celebrated or recognised. It's sort of swept away and neutralised, and so it's important that that there's a window to look at difference and culture and experience.
That's interesting, Wendy. So do you mean that when you're approaching the schools with certain books or certain themes of books, you get that response that maybe they don't need books that have Black protagonists or deal with racist topics because they're colorblind? Is that?
They haven't necessarily said that, but it's like there's some sort of vibes around like, oh, we don't have racism here, we wouldn't tolerate it. But it's not about that. It's about, can schools in our areas actually become anti-racist schools? Can they work towards that?
Yes.
As a model? Because,
and do they even know what that means?
Yeah, do they even know what that means?
You know, that's so relevant. I was just thinking it as you said it. It's about our pledge to be anti-racist. You know, the UK watched what happened in America last year, and you could see social media, you can see it on the news where people go, but the UK isn't racist. We don't have that issue over here. Why are they marching in London? Well, systematically break that down. And you're absolutely right. Are schools going to be anti-racist? Are they going to, excuse me, I'm getting passionate.
Are they going to pledge?
Are they going to pledge and do anti-racist work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really, really incredibly lucky that we now are working in one local school out of the 19 who has taken on this pledge and is absolutely working towards that. And that is something they want to put on their website, and they want to shout about it, and they want to say, we are proud of being an anti-racist school. And I'm actually in there with all the Books for Change. I'm doing storytelling, I'm doing workshops. I went in on their they had a multicultural like festivals day, and they invited me in to talk specifically about my Iranian heritage, my Iranian culture, and the festivities that we would do in Iran. And I had every single class that I could go into. It was all done in a COVID safe way. This was before obviously schools closed this time around, but you know, they are absolutely, they want me doing online readings, they want me doing training sessions with the teachers as well, which is absolutely key around anti-racism work. What does it mean to have a book in our school that says a kid's book about white privilege? How does a teacher even use that book if they don't understand what white privilege even means? And there's many adults, you know, out there that absolutely either deny or just don't understand or are too afraid to have that conversation. So if the adults feel that way, how on earth are the children ever going to learn? And this is the next generation. This is the generation that can make the change, so that we're not in this situation in 20, 30 years time where there's so much racism.
Are you expanding? Are you developing? You mentioned those 7 areas who have come on board. Can people join you in their local areas? How do we support this cause? And how do we ensure that we're engaging children in these readings?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As Wendy's already picked up on the point around, we've already got these 7 campaigns, but we welcome more. Please get in contact with us. I mean, we've got all our social media, we've got a website where you can contact us. We're hoping within the next few weeks that we will be supporting and launching a new campaign. So basically, we don't do the work, so to speak. We support people to set up a campaign, but it's very much down to people in the town, or the people in whoever they are, mums, dads, grandparents, whoever wants to do it, to set up the crowdfunder and to run the campaign, so to speak. But we are there 100% in the background. You know, we've got the toolkit, we've got us on Zoom. Everything's on Zoom. We've got us on Zoom, we've got email, you know, we're there, phones, and we're there to support people. So we absolutely do want more campaigns to start. It seems like it might be a bit of a scary thing, like, oh, how can I do this? I don't even know what I'm doing, but it's actually quite straightforward. And if you strip it back and think, actually, I'm in an area where, I don't know, there's 3 schools, maybe it's a village even. We've had that. We've had a village come forward and they did one school in the village. You know, nothing's too big, nothing's too small.
Yeah.
So we're there, absolutely there to support anyone if they want to raise £200 or if they want to raise £10,000. it's not all about it has to be £10,000 or anything like that. It's just what it is. People making change at any level, and we're there for it.
We've had groups, as Emily said, small one, just doing one primary school raising £300, and that was very, very heartfelt, that campaign. And then we've had larger ones that were super fast, super impressive, and just boshed it in a couple of weeks. We've had slow, we're quite a slow grower, really. Actually, we need to deliver our books, so we're not kind of like pushing people, setting targets or anything like that. People go at their own organic pace. And some people have done sort of quite sort of traditional fundraising events, and then other people have, you know, gone for council ward funding and put in bids for, you know, funding from different agencies like that. So people have taken a totally different approach. There was sort of Hive did a raffle, and, you know, got local businesses involved and all that sort of thing. And it is quite limited what you can do during COVID times. You have to be a little bit inventive and creative, but that's kind of part of the fun as well. And there's no real deadline or anything. So people are often doing this around quite busy lives. And so we totally acknowledge that we're in the same sort of situation. We fitted this around, you know, young children and jobs. You know, people can have a look at the toolkit on our website, and that kind of it's what we've learned from the process. So I'm sure a proper fundraiser would look at it and be like, oh yeah, but it's our best guess, you know. And so have a look at it, and then I think that gives a pretty realistic idea of the sort of commitment, really. But it has been a fun, creative process and really exciting. And I don't know about Emily, but I've always worked in kind of civil service jobs, so to actually have the freedom to go with something quite organically and use some of those skills, it's been really, really fun. And it motivates you.
Yeah. Do you know, I've just had a thought as you were saying that. Have you contacted any authors to let them know about this? The authors that you're involving, the books that you're picking, are they aware? Are they interested in going further?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we tag them in Twitter and we
Instagram.
Authors are lovely. They're just lovely people, and they're always really warm and really welcoming. And then people have come forward and just said, do you want 5 of my books? I'll sign them if you'd like. And what's your address? And so we've had lots of lovely donations. The writing community is lovely people.
We've got really excited when like our favourite authors have been like sharing our stuff on Instagram. It's like, oh, these people are amazing.
Like, Emily's not on Twitter, so I screenshot it. Look, they retweeted us.
I get the WhatsApp screenshots from Wendy, and we're like fangirling over these like amazing authors, like sharing all our posts and stuff. But it's been amazing. I mean, like, I've always worked kind of a bit fly by the night, and I've always worked in different like projects and creative projects and in the arts, or, you know, in a bit of marketing and this and that and here and there, freelance. And so, you know, for me, this is kind of like a normal way of working at midnight, writing some random Instagram post out. You know, but the thing for me is like, I've never worked in books. I've never worked in children's books. And this is my real big passion of mine. It's all about the kids for me, which sounds a bit cheesy, but it's just seeing their faces light up and something click and be like, oh, that's what that is. Wow, I've got a voice and I can do this. And just to be that person, to be right there in the moment when that's happened, it's just really, really magical. And that for me, it's just, that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a change in preference of what children hold in their hands, from iPads and gaming to all this stuff to books. I really do think it's going to happen.
We're going to come a full circle, aren't we? Because it's
I think it's time. I think the iPads took over for a bit, and I think people are getting a bit fed up with it. I generalize, but from speaking firsthand to parents and to, you know, friends of mine who hope one day that they can give their kids books rather than iPads. But my stepdaughter is an avid reader, and it's incredibly impressive. She read one of the Harry Potter books, the biggest one. I think the 5th one is the biggest one. She read it in like 2 weeks. And it's like a ridiculous 700-page book, and she's 8, she turned 9. And she'll come out with the most amazing vocabulary, and she's learned all about women's rights through her reading and through her mum and me. And we'll just sit down one day and I'll say to my partner, did you hear about this on the news, blah, blah, blah. And she'll go, well, that's really important for women's rights because this is what we need to do. And I'm just like, this is brilliant.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
if I could be 9 years old engaging with this level of conversation, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely there for it as well. Like my
Oh.
kids are 4 and 6, and my daughter is just like obsessed with Malala Yousafzai. And she's like, I want to be like Malala. I want to be like speaking up for people and talking about like girls' education and why it's so important that girls and boys are equal. And I'm like, you're 4. And it's really, she knows a lot of stuff. Like if I said to her, what does the government mean? What does the government mean? Like, what does that mean to you? You know, she can say like what that means. She'll be like, people who are in power, who make decisions, we can vote them in or not. It's really important that we go and put our vote on a ticket, and because we need to have a government that we want to do things that like is good for people. And I'm like, and you know, I do think there's a huge wave of change because people are just done by years and years of all of it. You know, we get a bit political here, but you know, at the end of the day, the kids are the only one, like they're the only ones now that can make a difference. You know, we're sort of, and I just feel like it's our job. It's my job. I see it as my job to help to be a part of that change.
So yeah, the next question that I'd love to talk to you guys about is realistic change. What do we think will come to the book world? I mentioned earlier that when I thought about representation, I thought about it in the media and TV and in theatre, and now I spent some time thinking about the world of publishing. So we can see indie bookshops putting some pressure on more diverse publishing. There are calls for BAME authors in GCSE English reading lists, and we can see feminist writers taking their places and seeing an increase in audience through the help of social media. But what do you think is happening, and will we see even more positive change in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we will. I think change is happening, albeit a bit slowly, maybe, or you know, more slower than we would like. But I mean, we're not, as Wendy's kind of said, we're not like a big publishing house, or we're not authors. We're not really anybody. I mean, we're just like this small campaign. So, sort of from our point of view, or definitely from my point of view, I feel like, and I've touched on this already, but it's one small change is massive for us. Be that, you know, in a school with a child, be that with a teacher, just sort of realizing something and looking at a book and being like, I'm going to do a topic on this because this is really important, and then thanking me and saying like, I didn't feel afraid to talk about my privileges with you, or I didn't feel anxious or nervous to read this book because you've kind of helped me, given me the skills to do that. And I'm not in those schools, and I'm not in those community centres every day. It's the people who are with these children, that need to have those skills to feel, you know, like they've got a voice. Adults need to have a voice as well, to make them feel like they are secure in what they're saying and that they're not afraid to have these conversations. And so for us, you know, I don't know what Wendy might be able to pick up on this a bit more, but I don't feel like I can really say like what's going to happen in the world of publishing, because I'm a bit like, I hope, you know, that these changes start happening more quickly than they are. I think it's still a bit slow, to be honest. Yeah, but from my point of view, in terms of the storytelling and being like on the front face of it with the kids, it's just about those small changes for me.
Yeah. What I think is interesting is when I think of, you know, the publisher's point of view, they're interested in something if it's potentially going to make money. I mean, it depends on the publisher. And if they're not seeing a consistent sale or a sale increase for these topics, they could question it. And it's actually quite interesting for us to maybe walk away from this conversation, and anyone who, again, it's your first time hearing of Books for Change, maybe we should look at those books, look at the publishers, maybe we should give feedback, maybe we should tell them it's important and to spend the time with these authors and with these stories, with these, animators, and tell them that this is what we want, and to give it as much breathing space. I also wonder, in the same breath as I say that, if there's a lot of funding, for writers to be able to publish books and to spend some time in the creative process. So that's something myself I'll walk away from this discussion to definitely go and check out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in particular, like Black and brown authors, and giving them that voice. And like Wendy was saying, I mean, I did hours and hours and hours of research and reading around the books that we have purchased, and made sure that, they weren't all white authors that were writing these books about Black and brown children, because it's about a lived experience.
Yeah.
And there was things that I was picking up on, thinking, well, that's not quite right, because I can relate to that, and that didn't. And so it was finding those tight, even those small authors that are really unheard of, and buying 19 copies of their book. They were like, wow, this is amazing, thank you so much. And then they just chucked in another 5 copies for free, because they were sort of so chuffed that they, their book was getting kind of out there, and we were putting it on our Instagram. And we haven't even got 1,000 followers, but we, we're trying.
Yeah,
Please come and like us over on Books for Change. So yeah, it's really important for me to be finding those authors that are unheard of, a little bit unheard of, or not really given the platform that they deserve.
I can't really comment on the publishing world. I think it is still a real struggle. I think it is a bit of a whitewash. I see on Twitter there's lots of sort of very small crowdfunder campaigns. We're 5 authors that want to get our books published, but we need to raise whatever, and then there's lots of that sort of stuff, so which tells me that it's still a struggle. There's a Pathways, which is about Black illustrators in children's books as well. So things are happening, but it all seems very grassroots and on the fringes, but it was the same in film, wasn't it? We're not going to make films with Black protagonists. Who's going to go and watch it? And then you had Black Panther, which just blew everyone away, and then it's suddenly that's all we want, kind of thing. So maybe we just I don't know, need the Black Panther of
Books for Change world.
I don't saying that, there's a book by Ellie McNichol, kind of Spark, and that's she's a neurodiverse lady who's written about, I haven't actually read it, she's sort of, it's more young adult rather than the age group we're looking at, but I follow her on Twitter, and I think this is her first book, and she's Waterstone's book of the century or something,
Oh, wow.
and she's done really, really well, and you just think there is a bit of traction. You think of books like Look Up and stuff, and I've seen some books, like Windrush Story, and it's a small selection, but they're advertised in Scholastic, and Scholastic are the big boys who as far as we can work out, and maybe people will tell me I'm wrong, but they seem to be the big boys that provide books for schools. And so if you start seeing change there, that's that's
because the schools, a lot of the schools are bound to, we've got X amount of money and we have to spend it. With Scholastic, all we do is just say, give us a package for whatever X £100, and then they just pick the books out, and they'll say on the topic of diversity. So
so we were quite conscious when we were buying the books that we were going to buy books that schools couldn't easily get themselves. So we were importing books like a kid's book about racism and a kid's book about white privilege, importing it from America, because you can't actually get it very easily in the UK, knowing that this was a really great, valuable book, and schools wouldn't be able to get their hands on it easily, because they probably would have to do a totally different process to get something like that out of cash rather than you know what I mean. So I think that's how it's worked, and it'd be interesting. I'm sure people will pick us up on it and go, actually it's not done like that, but I think that's how it's done. So we were quite conscious in getting those more fringe books, and we work closely with Letterbox Library, who, have you heard of them?
Yeah, I have indeed.
Yeah. So bulk bought books from them, not all of them, but a majority of the books came from them, because we know that they're very serious about representation in books, and they have been doing this since 1983. And yeah, so it was really great to work with them. We were really like,
yeah,
we're really flattered to work with them.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice, isn't it? That's really nice.
Yeah.
It's funny when you were saying about, you know, the school's focus. I also find I'm currently doing, well, I'm about to submit a final master's project for a master's degree I did in Cardiff. And I have found the reading list so tedious. And I think, like, generally, there was probably about 15 books recommended on the reading list. I think 2 books were made by women and the rest were written by white men. And, you know, fine, you know, if it's relevant, most of them were written in the 1980s, and you just kind of go, you know, business has changed a lot since then. But what I found really interesting is the more that I've started to read, you know, general books about systematic changes that need to happen, it's actually influenced my master's writing that I've done quite a bit. And again, I think it's looking exactly what you've just said about sourcing these books that the schools might struggle. I feel like the education system, I mean, again, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but the education system generally needs to look at what they're recommending. Like, you know, on courses, if you're someone who's from a certain background and you don't see an author on a reading list that is representing you or your mind or your background or where you want to go in business or go with your degree, I personally struggle. Like I find it, if I'm not connecting or feel like my representative writer is involved there, I'm struggling with my education writing. So again, we're talking about this from an inspiration point from children, but actually, again, it could be worthwhile. Anyone's listening to this, read into what's going on publishing, read into what's going on with educational resources generally as well, because you don't know what might come out of grassroots organizations like Books for Change.
There is a movement in, I work in higher education, and there is a movement of to decolonize the curriculum. Right. And that has been going for a while. Right. I think some universities are more welcoming and some are resistant, and some of it is down to resourcing. But that has been happening for a couple of years, I think. Again, I could be corrected on that. So there is that movement going on at higher education. There are campaigns for like the Black Curriculum campaign, and I think they're focusing on secondary, but I'm not picking up, and you know, we're learning here, but I'm not picking up on something that starts from early years and primary school. That it doesn't seem to come up on the conversation as much. Right. I'm picking up on GCSE curriculum and definitely in HE, because I'm surrounded by it where I work. But yeah, so I'm not really picking up on those early years, which are very fundamental. And when you're talking about child development, the concepts of race and things are founded in those very early years. So and difference and parenting, and you know, what makes a family, and all those concepts are founded quite early on. So it does definitely need to be put on the agenda.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to link all of your details, your website, your socials, everything that people need to know. But how do we support you? Can we donate? Can we buy books and send them to you? Can we do anything like that? Or is it just, well, not just, is it social following? Is it website engagement?
Right, so the Folkestone Books for Change, we've just this month in January closed the Just Giving page, and we've pretty much purchased every book now, and we're putting them into the schools in February. So Folkestone is that phase of is done now, and a lot of the other groups have delivered the books to schools. There's one, Calder Valley in Yorkshire, who I'm sure will be very happy for a donation, because they are covering a really big area in Yorkshire. And also we should have another campaign coming online. Can we say where it is, Emily, or is that putting too much pressure on her?
I think it's all right. I think
Yeah, fingers crossed Canterbury is starting up. So if people really just wanted to give a random donation, look up, and that's all on our website, so that we've got campaigns as a tab, and then how much they've raised and their socials. So they're still open for donations, but we've kind of done that phase. But obviously, yes, support.
Like us on Instagram, like us on Twitter, like all our socials. We would love some support on there, and to just find and link with some other amazing accounts. We've linked with so many. We've got this incredible like community on social media, which I'm just loving. I mean, we sort of split it between us. So Wendy's on Twitter and I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but it's just like the support is amazing. And some of the campaigns and the other things that people are doing out there that are similar to us, we're all supporting each other. There's no kind of, you know, you're doing this, I'm doing that, what are you doing? It's just everyone supporting, because we've all got the same goal, the same end goal, which is to get those books in schools, you know.
So that's the sort of second phase, as it were. It was Emily doing storytelling, bringing the books to life in different settings. So it's not just the local school that Emily's talking about. It's also, she goes to forest school, there's a beach school around here, which is lovely, and farm school. So outdoor settings as well, which is, you know, COVID safe at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in terms of what's next, get us excited. What's next for Books for Change?
Well, I actually am a judge on the Diverse Book Awards 2021.
Congratulations. I saw that on your website.
For the children's,
Brilliant.
I know, it was a bit of a, what? This is amazing. It's for the Children's Long List Award. So I'm one of the judges for that category. So that's really exciting, because basically loads of books are going to be coming through my letterbox. I'm going to get to read them and judge them, which is a bit like, wow, that responsibility is pretty huge. But just the fact that I'm connected with other people that are in that world is really exciting for me. And you know, to be able to kind of put my viewpoint across about you know, books that hopefully there's some little girls in there that look a bit like me, and I could be like, oh, this one's a good one. And that, you know, that for me really was the big thing that like I wanted other people to get excited about. It wasn't like, what are just Wendy and I excited about? This is about like other kids getting excited. And so that's what we're trying to do, is help them in any way we can through books. So we've got that going on, which is really cool. Obviously, we've got this new campaign starting in a few weeks, Canterbury Books for Change. Nice, because that's a big area as well. So support us with that. And then, you know, we've got the Calder Valley Books for Change, as Wendy said, that are still going. They're trying to raise a lot of money for a lot of schools. So that's ongoing, and we keep bigging them up and talking about them. And, you know, we want more campaigns to start. So come and just chat to us, get involved. And also not just campaigns, like, have you got a community centre? Have you got a forest school where you've got kids that you're talking to? Invite me along, let me come and see what you're doing, and let me bring some magical storytelling with our Books of Change.
Yeah. You guys, this has been really, really lovely. I'm so glad that London Bookshop Crawl has brought us together. So big thank you to Bex and her team over there. And thank you so much, Wendy and Emily. I'm going to be following your journey so closely and keeping in touch with you both. And I thank you massively from Southampton over to Folkestone for joining me. It's been really lovely to meet you.